Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurial Musician, a newsletter, coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. This is TEM297 titled, How to Tell If You Are on the Right Career Path. Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you would like a small way to be able to help me here at TEM to help spread the word, if you can think of one friend who could specifically benefit from hearing a particular episode, please share it with them. You can share it with an enemy. You can share it with someone who you are neutral towards. It doesn't matter. But if you'd like a way, I get asked that sometimes, how people can support. You can, of course, become a Patreon patron would be amazing, which there's a link in the show notes as always, which is patreon.com/TEM podcast. But even just recommending the show, or in particular, I think sometimes it can be more meaningful. It feels like homework when you tell somebody, you need to check out this whole, and then they see 297 episodes. Like, where do I start? When you say, hey, there was an episode on clarity, and you were talking to me about it, and you should check this out, that'd be really awesome. All right, TEM 297, how to tell if you are on the right career path. Getting in-depth clarity about a big question like this is a process, but there is one question you can ask yourself that is a really good litmus test. If you were forced to start over, what would you do starting today? Notice this is a different question than what would you pivot to. This is starting over from scratch. Zero sunk costs, zero overhead of any kind, either monetary or emotional. Just starting over with a clean slate. I don't know if you remember back, I don't know how many months ago, might have even been years ago at this point, because this has been going for, 297 episodes. I think you can forgive me for not remembering the timeline of each one. I did an episode on building in an empty lot. And that's what this question gets towards. So let me just recap that building on an empty lot, because it's a really important thing for me to be reminded of. Starting over, you are building in a completely empty lot. You get to decide, and in this analogy, we're building a store, okay? You get to decide how big the lot is, how big the building is, which direction it faces, how many parking spaces there are, whether the sign goes on the front on the busy street or it goes on the side where the parking lot is, what the font is that you use on the sign, how big the writing is, how many words or not. You get to decide absolutely everything. That is different than if you buy a store from someone. And I don't own any brick and mortar stores. I'm never going to, but I think you can very easily figure out that this applies to absolutely every aspect of our career, right? So that's very different than buying a store and then a couple of months in saying, you know what, it would be a lot better if they should have put the sign actually on the side because it's more visible from these people at the traffic light, or the sign needs to be bigger, or it needs to be a different color because it blends in with the, right? You get the point here, right? So pivoting, which is a very important thing to do, but in terms of this mental exercise, pivoting is like taking over another store because you've got all sorts of sunk costs involved. And what the purpose of this exercise, this very simple question, is there is no pivot. You're just starting over from scratch. Remember, everything you have done up to this point is a gift from your former self that you do not have to accept. If you go to 3 years of law school, or you spend 3 years getting a doctorate so that you can teach college, and then you start teaching college and you realize that it is not as fun as you thought it was going to be, either being a lawyer or being a college professor, then ignoring sunk costs, the only rational thing to do moving forward, I'm oversimplifying on purpose because you may very well have mouths to feed in a family or an elderly relative to take care of financially and otherwise, or you are married and your spouse has a say in this, right? But in a vacuum, the only responsible thing is to stop doing the profession that you, it turns out, don't enjoy. You should not keep doing it just because you spent 3 years getting certified to be a fill in the blank. So again, you don't have to accept any gifts from your former self. Just because you have released 297 episodes of a podcast does not mean that you need to or should get to episode 300 or 500 or 1,000 if it's no longer the best thing for you moving forward. Again, getting a nuanced and in-depth answer to the question of whether you are on the right career path is a process, but asking yourself, what would you do if forced to start over, is the best first step that I know of to start figuring that out. And now, if you don't mind, a shameless plug for a clarity call from TEM Coaching. A clarity call with me will take you from confused about your best path forward to crystal clear on exactly what to do in one 90-minute call. Perhaps most importantly, you will hang up knowing what to do first. There's nothing worse than getting clarity on your goals, but then getting off a call with a coach and instantly realizing that you have no idea where the hell to start. And in fact, that can sometimes feel worse than if you hadn't gotten the insight in the first place. So head to tem.fm/clarity to learn more about clarity calls from TEM Coaching. And I should note that I only accept people I know I can help. So apply today and I will let you know if I think we would be a good fit. And there is limited availability. So if you'd like to get a jump on the summer, then apply today at tem.fm/clarity. This week's quote is a really good one. This is as good a quote as I have heard in quite some time. It is from Michael J. Fox. Quote, "Gratitude is what makes optimism sustainable." That quote absolutely blew me away. Gratitude is what makes optimism sustainable. He shared that on an interview on CBS this past week, and I can't stop thinking about that quote. I find optimism comes pretty naturally to me at times, but boy, oh boy, when it doesn't come naturally, it can be practically impossible for me to manufacture it. That is always solved for me by one thing, which is gratitude. When I cultivate gratitude, that is, take intentional steps to experience it, optimism comes along for the ride each and every time. Optimism is a byproduct of gratitude. It can be big things like, for example, 2 billion people around the world don't have access to clean and safe drinking water, or my family has their health, knock on wood. But it can also be things that aren't life or death. I've been lucky enough to play with some of my absolute musical heroes, for example. If I remind myself that I have done that, I stop thinking about how this particular fancy orchestra hasn't hired me in over 3 years. Or that I live in a time when I can host something like this podcast and get my message out to so many people without needing any permission and without some gatekeeper approving each topic I cover. As long as I have gratitude, my optimism is sustainable, and that is a beautiful thing to be reminded of. So a heartfelt thank you to Michael J. Fox for that true gift. And thank you all for your attention, the most valuable commodity any of you have to give. I really do appreciate it. There are so many people who could be piping their hot takes into your ears right now, whether you are working out or you are commuting or you're doing laundry or you're actually just sitting still and not looking at a screen, which I'm incapable of doing. But anyway, regardless, I really do appreciate you. Thank you to all of you, and thank you to those of you who have shared the podcast with somebody. I appreciate all of the support, and I know I say that every week, but I truly do mean it. I really do, because there's just so many options, and I've had some people who have been checking this thing out. Some from the beginning, some who are kind of nuts, like I've done this with podcasts too. Have discovered it partway through, and then they go through the entire back catalog, and then they stay current. You all are your angels. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart, and that is going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.